Carl slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect. Garland front of the lane, lob to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Roan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including FanDuel Sports Network without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. The Cleveland Cavaliers started off their West Coast trip with their most dominant offensive performance of the season, giving it to the Denver Nuggets, putting up 149 points, just an absolutely absurd offensive output with contributions across the board. Joining me today, a man that's always making considerable contributions to this podcast, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right, brother. The Cavs just keep winning. They keep winning in new, fun ways. They put up 149 points. The Cavs just gained a half game in the standings as the Boston Celtics dropped the Indiana Pacers tonight. They've lost, I believe, 4 out of 6 is what you said?
4 out of 6. Yeah.
Couldn't be us. And the Cavaliers are 27-4, heading into a back-to-back over the next couple days.
Yeah, as it currently stands, with the Celtics now at 9 losses, the Orlando Magic are closer to Boston than Boston is to us, which I would not have expected given the Magic's injuries, and I would have not expected, just given how good Boston is. But, this is probably something that we are going to see in some form or fashion with the Cavs at some point this year, where we're going to have one of those stretches where, you lose 3 out of 5 games. But when another team has that kind of a hiccup first and they blink first, that's a good position to be in. But before we get into the basketball of this and discuss the Cavs win over the Nuggets and the rest of this West Coast trip, I do want to mention that the Cavs community did lose one of, I would call him a founding father of Cavs online discourse in Ben from Real Cavs Fans, someone that we were fortunate enough to had an online relationship with for many years. And Carter, I know he gave you your first blogging job at Real Cavs Fan, so I'll let you say some words first.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a huge loss for the community. If you're younger, or because really it was right at the end of my generation or at the beginning of kind of my Cavs dieharddom that Twitter started really blowing up. But Real Cavs Fans was and still is it was kind of Cavs Twitter before Cavs Twitter. An amazing blog that Ben owned and ran. You're right. He gave me my first job he gave me my first blogging position. Used his connections to way early on in my blogging and podcasting career to get me people like Brian Windhorst coming on the podcast and things like that. Stuff we can't even do now. We can't get Wendy on now. And Ben just had relationships up and down the Cavs community. When we were doing our 2016 Finals rewatch pod during COVID, we were like, "Oh, we need a heavy hitter." Ben, do you have anyone? He goes, "I can get you Larry Nance Jr." And within 5 minutes, Larry Nance is following me on Twitter and saying, "Hey, I heard you guys wanted to do a podcast." Like, he was that kind of guy. It was a shocking loss. I don't think anyone was we were DMing with him literally earlier in the week, throwing around rumors and things like that. So it was a huge loss for the community, huge loss for us personally. Ben really helped shape the way we perceived the Cavs. Frankly, I'm really, really sad. It's I've been a couple times where I've gone to unpin the group DM because I always had it at the top of my my DMs, and I just haven't quite found the heart to do it yet. I'm going to miss the guy. And, he did a lot for us, but he also was just a good friend and a good member of the Cavs community. Everyone send some love to Ben Starcher's family. And, what a loss for the community. And sorry to start the pod on a downer note, but I don't see any world which we could have started this pod and not talk about Ben and his impact.
Yeah, and we've been really lucky to do this podcast from the perspective of being fans, right? Like we haven't had to put on journalist hats at any point here. We try our best to be objective with the analysis, and when it comes to rooting interests, we're not going to pretend. We are homers. We are rooting for good things to happen with the Cavs. And when something like this happens, I'm always trying to find a positive way to kind of look at it. And what I like seeing is just the outpouring of affection on Twitter. People just kind of reflecting of, wow, it was a large part of my life. I've been reading Real Cavs fans for 15 years or whatever the case may be. And I think that this is one of those kind of important reminders that even though what brings a lot of us together is sports and our love of the Cavs and the living and dying with the results of every single game, the communities we build through that fandom are really important. The friendships that we establish as a result of being fans of the team are really important. And I think that's just something to never really lose sight of, because as much fun as the wins and losses are, getting to share it with people, I think, is what makes it so special. And especially for, Cavs fans that live outside the market, that may not live around a lot of other Cavs fans, those relationships that you have online, those communities, those spaces are so damn important. And I just... That's kind of my takeaway from this. Obviously, I'm going to miss talking with him. I'm going to miss arguing with him. Having
a lot of good arguments over the years.
Well, when you got a curmudgeon and an optimist in a group chat together, we are going to have some disagreements, and it was a lot of fun. And I'm definitely going to miss the guy, and I'm going to try to remember all kind of those fun moments. But I'm with you. When news comes up, one of my first instincts is to go over there and say something snarky.
Yeah. So it's a big loss for us personally, big loss for Cavs fans. And if you got a comfy chair, watch your next Cavs game from it in honor of the big guy. So shouts to Ben, and now we can probably pivot to talk about Cavs, because he probably would have hated that segment in the first place.
Oh, he would have hated it, but I really hope that he was sitting in a comfy chair somewhere, whatever comes next, watching the Cavs give the absolute beatdown to the Denver Nuggets. This is fun because it was 2 games against Denver where I really felt in that first game against the Nuggets that Denver came out to play, that they were focused, they were shooting well. It wasn't, one of the kind of those off shooting nights. They really played with a lot of tempo. That first game in Cleveland was the quickest game that the Cavs played all season from a pace perspective. And this one in Denver was very similar. They had a pace of 105 in this game. Denver came out shooting the ball really well. And in the first quarter of both games, I kind of had a similar reaction where I was sitting there being like, we're not really winning the minutes without Jokic. Denver's shooting well. This is a really good team. They have a lot of talent. And when their starters are playing well, they can beat you. Like, it's a little bit of nervousness. And then as the game progresses, the Cavs just built the cushion in both of those games against Denver. And it just did not seem like they had enough firepower to shorten that gap to make it a competitive game again. And I don't know if that is a position that we'd be able to be in the past, even in 22-23 when we had a very good offense.
Yeah, man. I mean, you nailed it. The only thing I would argue is it wasn't building a cushion. It was oh no, it's a Cavalanche. It was a Cavalanche, Justin. There was no cushion. There was nothing gentle about it. It was a deluge of threes. What was a 23-2 run or whatever it was? And to your point, right after Jokic checked back in, like normally when Denver's like, okay, we survived. Now it's time for us to kind of take command of the game. And it's time, we did our 6-minute stint without Jokic, and now it's time to take over. It's just like, nope. It's time for us to get run off the floor, actually. And like that has just been so emblematic of this Cavs season, which is just, they're just always there. Like you can be playing great. And I think Denver really played a great offensive game. They didn't play a good defensive game, but they didn't play 150 points bad defensive game. The haymaker is always just right around the corner. And even if you're hanging, it just takes 6-7 possessions for the game to completely flip on its head. And something the Cavs have done an exceptional job at is it just didn't get competitive again. I mean, how many fake 20-point leads are there on a night-to-night basis in the NBA where a team goes nuts for a quarter And then you look up 9 minutes of game time later, and it's a 7-point game. I think Denver flirted with like an 11-point deficit like twice, but generally it was like 15 to 20 points the rest of the way. And they just totally took over.
Yeah, and in that first quarter, I thought, the fast break points for Denver were really kind of the equalizing force. The
Christian Brown was having a heck of a game.
Honestly, he's played really, really well. And people talk about them missing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. KCP's not having a good season with Orlando. He's not shooting the ball well. And Christian Brown is flat out playing better than him this year. They might be missing some depth. I think that's very clear when you kind of look at how their bench minutes have performed over the season. But Brown's really stepped up and he's played great for them. But yeah, those fast break points really kind of kept them in the game for the most part. And I thought once the Cavs kind of tightened things up and kept them in the half court, they were able to play good defense. I thought it was a lot of good shot making outside of that, but I feel like the half court defensive numbers, or at least the process in those spots, was really good. But it really cracked me up, Carter, that on the last podcast we were joking how no one would ever be results over process. And I was thinking to our 2 games against Jokic and some of the games we've had against Milwaukee, where typically the formula is kill them in the minutes without Giannis or Jokic on the court. And it's been the opposite. It's been results over process because we are winning the star minutes. And I think that's one of those kind of encouraging things. You probably can't read into it too much. I don't know if you had a 7-game series, if that would be consistently how it plays out. But when you're trying to look for any little morsel, any little sign of how legitimate this season is for the Cavs, the fact that it's not, they can keep 2 of their stars on the court at all times, and they're kind of killing the bench lineups, but
which they also are.
Which they also are, but in kind of these higher profile matchups, it's not that they're just beating up on those starless minutes, and that's something that isn't going to translate to the playoffs when rotations tighten up. They're winning those star minutes as well, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, your best has to be better than their best. That's just like the most simple principle of high leverage basketball. There's wiggle room in there, right? Where you can pull an upset sometimes by attacking a weak lineup and things like that, and taking command of the game. But if all things are equal, both teams are equally rested, both teams have equal scouting time on each other, and you're in a playoff series, your 5 has got to beat their 5, because then your best 5 has got to beat their best 5. There's a reason I spent all of last year obsessing about the starting lineup's net rating whenever they got to play, because it's just I need to see this team beat the other team when they are giving them a good punch. Mm-hmm. And I do feel like that has been a meaningful change this year. I mean, it helps that no lineups are losing, so it's kind of hard to find any cracks in the armor. But they definitely have handled a Denver. And I was thinking because I want to say after the Jokic stretch, they were up 2 at the end of the first, and we're up 6 or 7 by the end of the Jokic rest, and that's probably a plus 20 net rating, because it's such a short sample of time. But it doesn't always feel that way. What happened in the last 6 minutes of the second quarter felt more like what I would have expected to happen the first 6 minutes of the quarter.
Yeah, and you look at the season-long numbers, the core 4, as long as they have a small forward with them, they have a plus 10 net rating, just kind of removing some of those minutes with Craig Porter Jr., Sam, and some of the other Ty Jerome that they've had. It's been a plus 10 net rating. They've been very, very good together, and, this was probably one of their better games together collectively, where all 4 of Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, and Allen score 20 points.
Dare I say the best? I don't know if I've ever seen the 4 of them put that. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen the Cavaliers put up 149 in regulation. I mean,
yeah, it's. I would say probably the best, also considering opponent, because I remember that game. I think it was in their first year together where it was against Charlotte. I think it might have even went to overtime where DG had 45, Donnie had 30, and I think Mobley and Allen both had 15 to 20. Definitely one of the best performances. And what I liked about this one in particular was how shared the playmaking was. They had a season high in assists with 40. Darius had 7. Some brilliant passes from him on the night. Mitchell and Mobley both had 6 apiece. Like that's
no
what
one
I really
40 assists with no one having more than 7 is banana pancakes, dude. Dean Wade had 5 assists. That has to be a career high.
It's exactly what I like about the difference between this offense and what we saw in 22-23. Because 22-23, they did have, a top 10 offense. They did have one of the best defenses in the league as well. But it didn't translate to the playoffs because there were fewer things that you had to account for as a playoff defense. If you kind of cut off the head of the snake, there wasn't a counterpunch. There wasn't another move that they can go to. And I think what we've seen from the Cavs this year is because they are able to get playmaking from so many positions, because the way that even Garland and Mitchell get their own offense is varied beyond just, pick and roll or sets where the ball's starting off with in their hands. I think that's what makes them so much more dangerous. And I think that's why you're seeing teams, even the best defenses in the league, not really have a lot of answers for what the Cavs are doing offensively.
Dude, I mean, it just feels unfair. They have they are picking at every weak part of your defense. Almost, I mean, the way Evan attacked MPJ in the second half was probably some of the most malicious behavior I've seen out of Evan Mobley on offense.
Yeah.
It was over and over and over again. Foul drawn, foul drawn, foul drawn, foul drawn. He had no shot to, the handle looked as tight as it's ever looked. The first step looked as fast as it's ever looked. Obviously helps going at MPJ in terms of first step looking good. But just the fact that he was like, no. I'm going to cook this guy over and over and over again till I foul him out of the game or they sub him out or they have to start sending more help. Yep. It was and that was just not something they had last year. So they have
the last 2 years.
Yeah.
How could we attack a weak front court player in the past? It was basically
EG isn't a great switch scorer,
Right,
Donovan is, but
it was basically trying to force a switch in a pick and roll situation, where they're able to potentially bring help. Maybe they fight through the screen and you're killing clock trying to get that switch. Being able to attack weaker defenders in the front court without that, just being able to say, okay, Evan, you're going to attack and Michael Porter Jr. here, And I don't even know if it was that communicated in that way. I think he just got the ball and felt, hey, I have a mismatch here. I am able to take it to the basket. I'm able to score.
The third time in the row, it was communicated through sheer force. Let me tell you.
It's, we started off previewing this road trip saying this is going to be, as much as it's a test for the team, because anytime you go west and you're playing these later games and whatnot, and you're playing the big bad Western Conference, you're going to get measured in that way. But we said the main thing we're looking for is how Mobley does in these matchups, because he's going against star bigs. He's going against some really good defenses. He's going against a lot of length. And, Nikola Jokic this season, I would say, has taken a step back as a defensive player. No Aaron Gordon in this particular matchup. But being able to attack those mismatches, being able to attack a weaker defender in Michael Porter Jr., it really opens up a lot of possibilities. And if you want to talk about possibilities being opened up by his advanced play, 4 of 6 from 3. That is happy learning to putt.
It really is, bro. I mean, it's getting pretty crazy, Justin. It's getting pretty crazy. The most he'd ever hit was 3 in a game. And he'd only done it 2 or 3 times in his career. And he's done it 4 of the last 8 games. The volume is crazy. The confidence with which he's taking it is crazy. I mean, he had an off the dribble one against where DeAndre Jordan went under a screen. He's catching. He's sliding into the into a spot. It's not just a pure set 3. obviously, I don't think he's going to be necessarily a 40% 3-point shooter if he keeps on shooting 4 to 6 a game. But like, man, like we talked a lot about how at least the playmaking had to come along this year for the concerns about the spacing to go away with the two bigs. I just didn't expect to get both. Like, the fact
we didn't dare to dream, Carter. We did not dare to dream.
Like, the fact that it's all happening in 1 year right now, where he's killing dudes off the bounce, in transition as a pick and roll ball handler, and he's hitting 40% of his threes on higher volume than he's ever taken in his career. It's like, all of a sudden, it just gets real impossible, man. And like, we and I'll cede the floor a little bit to you because you spent a cool 14 hours in the Discord arguing about it. But what's funny is whether his gravity takes a meaningful jump. You're drinking poison as a defense. Like, even if guys don't start guarding him tighter out there or closing out harder, okay. Like, I guess they'll just keep shooting them and making them. And like, there will be a bit of prove it, but like, I don't know, man. The offense works. I don't think he's had a meaningful change in how his shooting has changed how he's been guarded. Maybe a little bit, but not hugely. I think the whole package has changed how he's being guarded. Like, because you don't want to. He's like Giannis. You don't want to give him a huge head of steam the way you used to be able to. But like, even if you hang off him, the offense works pretty darn well, and giving him that head of steam is just as painful as guarding him closely. So I don't know, man. It does feel like it is like the final form, the final cherry on top for an already historic offense that he's able to do this.
Yeah, and I think even if he continues to shoot at this percentage, my personal feeling is I don't think he's going to be guarded dramatically different. I think,
why would you? You got to help off Darius and Donovan at some point,
right? And
or to help them to help those guards.
When you look at the tracking stats, and I know we've talked about this over the years, where I really, when we talk about open shots from three, I just stick to what NBA.com classifies as wide open. I know some of the other stats people, that's kind of their approach with it. Whereas they have that 4 to 6 foot range, which is measured center of body to center of body.
It really should be open. arm to release point.
Right, but I think it makes a lot of sense when you're kind of doing center of body as well. But that's classified as open, which in a lot of cases is kind of a late contest. But I think that's kind of the range where you have to guard Mobley, because if you play up any closer than him, what's not going to be captured in the 3-point attempts and the tracking data there is in the instances where people do close out on him and they do get that high up on him. He is able to, with his long arms and his long legs and stride, to blow by those guys and create advantages attacking off the dribble. That's one of the big changes to his game. And I don't think the 3-point shooting is ever going to be at a volume where, okay, we're going to like basically face guard Mobley. We're going to get like right up in his grill all the time on and off ball, because you have to respect that drive. And, he is going to have a bit of a slower release still from three, right? Like it looks very nice, but it's not a quick release where I think defenders are always going to kind of take the standpoint of, all right, if I'm playing 4 feet off him, I'm going to be able to give him a late contest. And we're going to just have to trust that that's good enough, because if you're really overcommitting to take away that 3 ball, with the number of scorers and playmakers and smart cutters and off-ball players that the Cavs have, you are ceding the floor to better options. Like basically, like no, you are picking the lesser of the evils if you're really cheating up that much to take away the 3 ball. So I don't think it's going to dramatically change, but I do think that there has been a difference in how teams are guarding him. It's not like some of those screenshots you see of Okoro standing in the corner and his defenders in the key. No, you're playing up on Mobley because he is talented as a shooter. He's talented as a driver, as a playmaker. You're going to account for him. And I think that is what's made the offense so potent no matter what the configuration is.
And for what it's worth, he's still going to get a lot of wide open threes. You know, I think you're the one who pulled the stat that like only like 9.9% of Donovan's 3-point attempts are even lightly contested. Like most of the time you're taking wide open threes in this league. And if you're not, you have a bad shot diet. So, and like the reality is, if Donovan is attacking the rim super aggressively, he gets by his man, Evans' guy has to go down and try to protect the rim. Because as big as the 3-point revolution is, there is no greater value shot in the league than a wide open layup or a almost not contested at all layup. Like, which, by the way, is why the Cavs offense is so good, even though their 3-point volume isn't that crazy, because they get so many good, clean looks at the rim. But I digress. So you're still going to get a lot of those. I think what really matters is when they are 6 to 8 feet away because of just the way the defense is shaped, are they closing out hard? Are they closing out soft? Or are they not closing out at all?
Correct.
And the difference in the geometry of the floor on a hard closeout versus a soft closeout versus a non-closeout is an enormous thing. And that is what gravity is. Gravity isn't being face guarded 25 feet from the hoop. Like,
yeah, on the weak side.
Yeah. Like, that's reserved for the Sam Merrills, the Kyle Korvers, the Ray Allens, the Steph Currys of the world, the greatest shooters in the history of the sport. Darius Garland doesn't get face guarded off ball when he's on the weak side. So, like, I think
He doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we need to really be thoughtful about what gravity really means when we're discussing this. Because really, I think ultimately it comes down to, if you're kind of close, are you closing out or not?
Yeah. And you know, that decision also has other effects on the game as well, right? If you are closing out on Evan Mobley, that's going to open up offensive rebound opportunities, because that's one less defender that's kind of, you know, still hanging around in the paint and turning around to get a box out rather than jumping out on the shooter, right? I think, you know, you look at some of those Mobley 3-point attempts, you have DeAndre Jordan, Larry Markkinen, Walker Kessler, all, even though they were all classified as open shots, by the time that ball's released, their hand is up in the air and they are right by Evan Mobley. They are out of defensive rebounding position. And you know,
by the way, the cutting lanes are open. And Evan's a great passer who will be taller than the guy closing out on him a cool 80% of the time.
Yeah, so I think all of that is really important. And you know, as I said, I don't think he's ever going to be, you know, super closely guarded from three. But, you know, that's going to work to his advantage as well. That's going to be part of what makes him so unfair, because he is such a tall player with such a high release point. And, you know, even a contest, a lot of the times, it's going to be someone shorter than him that's not going to be impacting the shot one way or another. So he's going to be able to get these clean looks. So I think the biggest thing, though, whether it's the 3-point shooting, whether it's him picking out weak defenders and going at them, it's the confidence. It is the continued aggression that he is playing, the force that he's playing with. And I just think every time that he is being forceful and he's being aggressive, it makes everything else work better. I think back to, you know, when you know, we were enamored with Mobley. We were excited with 22-23. But the reason why I kept harping on in that Knicks series, the 0.09 points per possession on the roll, was, you know, this is something to keep an eye on. You know, Mitchell Robinson was playing off him in the paint. He wasn't stepping up to contest that floater. He wasn't stepping up to contest the mid-range shot. And Mobley was not effective in that spot. I don't think you go into a playoff series, you're going to see that version of Evan Mobley. We didn't see that last year. We saw a much more aggressive version than him, and he excelled against the Celtics. I think that is, you know, when people are looking for tangible change that says, what's different about this year than past years, highlighting where players came up short and the internal growth that they've, you know, had to overcome those issues and become more well-rounded and more effective players, is the best way to kind of, you know, give a little bit more confidence when you talk about how this team is going to hold up in a playoff series.
Yeah, I mean, and for what it's worth, like a lot of those deficiencies, you know, that I think we saw progress on last year, even we're seeing even more. I mean, they just murdered Denver in when Denver played drop coverage in this game. Evan hit a couple floaters and short mid-range jumpers. Jarrett was unbelievable, and like I feel like we had to talk about Jarrett for this podcast because I think he and Evan are the best defenders of Nikola Jokic in the league. They are so freaking annoying. I think they do a pretty good job of suppressing his attempts. The playmaking is as limited as it's going to get, and like it's always silly because he's always going to end up with a triple double, and it's kind of like I think you almost have to think back to those Cavs years with LeBron where he's going to get his 27, 7, and 7, but like if you really are a Cavs fan, you know when LeBron had a bad game or not. And it's just, it very rarely reflects in the box score. I felt like they both Jarrett and Evan, but especially Jarrett in that first half, punished Jokic for the style of defense he was playing and made a lot of easy buckets, hard buckets. And with the best player in the world, which I think Jokic is still, that's the best I think you can ever count on. And like, it just gets really, really tough for Denver to hang if Jokic isn't the best player on the floor or by a lot on any given game.
Yeah, that Jokic triple double, whether you're focusing on it or not, it's just one of those things that's always there. It's omnipresent at this point. He's always going to be putting up those stats. But you're right, Jarrett does such a great job on him. And I thought last game that we played against Denver, he didn't have a crazy stat line, but I thought he worked his ass off. Like I thought he was playing hard. He was making him work. He was fighting for rebounds. He was, generating second chance opportunities and really making him work. And then this game, Jarrett got the stat line in addition to that, right? Like 22 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and a block. Like that is a flat out dominant performance. And I think
his hands were unbelievable in the second quarter, Justin. I'm talking like he had 3 steals. He must have had 7 deflections in that quarter.
Yeah.
He was everywhere.
And, he's someone that doesn't always get the glory, right? Like when you have 3, legitimate all NBA talents playing for you, and you're winning at the league best clip and whatnot. Sometimes it's easy to overlook Jarrett, but he's always doing that hard work in the background, kind of similar to Zoom AI Companion, because when you're doing your best work, Zoom AI Companion can help you do the rest, like automatically taking notes, answering meeting questions, and helping you respond to your coworker. Available at no additional cost with eligible paid plans. Work happy with Zoom AI Companion.
Absolutely, brother. Well done.
And that hurt me a little bit because I didn't want to move off Jarrett just yet, but
let's go back to it then. Let's go back to it.
I was like, you know what? It's time to get that Zoom read in. We needed to shout out Zoom AI Companion there. But I think that, we had talked about how Jarrett had looked a little tired at times, where, you weren't feeling his impact as much. And I think that this is one of those games where in some of the matchups against the best teams in the league, I would not feel as good about the Cavs' chances if they didn't have Jarrett Allen to do a lot of the heavy lifting. I would not feel as good against Nikola Jokic. I would not feel as good against Joel Embiid. I would not feel as good against Giannis. Like you talk about, getting up stats and whatnot, and the way that Mobley and Allen are able to bother Jokic. Did you see Giannis's quote after the last game? We didn't talk about it on the podcast, but someone basically brought up, well, Cleveland's not the same defensively when you look at their D rating compared to OKC, and Giannis basically laughed it off. He's like, no, Cleveland's a better defense. Like they bother us more. They have more length, they have more size, the speed that they're able to play with. He's like, we just felt like we were bigger than OKC, and their defense didn't bother us the same way. So that's one of those styles make fights parts of basketball where opponent's ability to challenge you in different ways is going to impact things more than just looking at season-long offensive and defensive ratings. But I really do feel like when the Cavs have it rolling, when they have all of their pieces, what they are able to do defensively and what Mobley and Allen are able to do with their length and their mobility is just a really, really special combination.
Yeah, man. No one else can do this. No one else gets to, maybe Boston's the closest with their centers. Eventually, OKC will be if we see Chet again healthy, in terms of just being able to have a real legitimate defensive body to throw at these guys for 48 minutes a game. That really makes things hard, and that's not even accounting for the 13 to 18 minutes a game that they play together. That it gets
Right.
it goes from hard to impossible really quick. Unless you're able to catch the ball in a spot where you can shoot right away. Like, there is no worse hell to be in against the Cleveland Cavaliers than when you catch and have to gather, make a move, and then go up at the rim. Like, you're just not going to succeed against these bigs. And Jarrett, I think, is just a huge part of it. The selflessness, I think his rebounding's better than it's ever been. And yeah, he's an awesome player, man. You can, I love that,
That
FanDuel.
fast break dunk.
Oh my
Like, how
God.
many bigs are doing that?
Yeah. And part of that's the deflections, man. He's just getting his hand in the cookie jar. I mean, you mentioned that transition game from Denver in the first quarter. Part of what short-circuited was all those deflections as they were trying to get moving, where Jarrett was just mucking up the flow of what they were doing. He's just an awesome player, man. I just don't think there's maybe more than one or two teams in the league that can look at their their quote unquote fourth guy and feel as good as Cavs fans do about Jarrett Allen.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And, it's funny bringing it back to the Denver pace thing. It's, what we have wanted to see from the Cavs is that they are able to impose their style of game against any opponent. And I think that's one of the things that we're going to want to continue to see, right? I want to see that against OKC when we play them. Like, are we able to still play our brand of basketball? I want to see it against Memphis and the other best defenses in the league. That's going to be a real test. But sometimes, teams will try to counter what a team is doing offensively by making them play even just a different style. Like, all right, let's see what happens when we speed it up. Like, you can either muck things up and slow the game down, or you can really speed it up. And sometimes that's going to lead to issues. I think back to the 2016 finals, and the 4 games the Cavs won were the highest paced games, even though that's counterintuitive, where you want to, the Warriors are best regular season team ever. And this dominant offense, you probably want to make things ugly like you did in 2015. No, they're playing with tempo and not letting them set up in the half court was so important. And, we forced them into turnovers by playing a higher pace. Denver tried to up the pace, and the Cavs are like, all right, we can do this, but faster. Like, I don't mind doing that. We'll keep playing our style, right? And they mostly did it without a lot of turnovers. Like, they had that one stretch in the third where they had a few, but they won the points off of, they won the second chance points battle. They won the points off turnover battle. They, even though Denver got some offensive rebounds, they won the offensive rebounding battle. Denver was trying to impose their style of play onto the Cavs, and the Cavs said, that's fine. We can play Cavs basketball at this tempo. This works for us.
Yeah, man. They're awesome. We were talking before we went live about Discord was talking about the upcoming stretch, and I think someone at some point was like, yeah, if we split this back to back, I'll feel pretty good. And I'm kind of like, I won't. This team is so good that they should, the Warriors and Lakers are, maybe 2 tiers below this Cavs team. And on balance, you should beat teams that are 2 tiers below you, and you should be disappointed if you don't. And like, I'm in a spot where like I'm running out of ways to like hedge on a game-to-game basis, or like looking at the schedule and like trying to be reasonable about the losses they quote-unquote should take. You look at that Lakers game, I think it's one of the few rest disadvantaged games that you have this year, and you'll be on the back half back-to-back on the road, and the Lakers won't be, but I just kind of don't care. Like, I just think they should be able to win. And
it would be understandable, but I'm with you. Like, it would be disappointing. Like,
it would be a disappointing loss. So like, I I don't know, man. I gotta say, Justin, I might want these OKC wins too much. I'm working myself into a shoot over here.
I like that.
I don't like this OKC team. I don't all the way understand what the root of it is. Maybe it's the fact that they are like plus 350 to win the title. And the Cavs are like plus 1,700. And the reason everyone gives for the Cavs is lack of playoff success, even though they've gone as far as the Oklahoma City Thunder in the playoffs. No problem. No problem. But, you know, there's just a lot of crowning of this OKC team as a true blue title contender when I really haven't seen the top end success that different from the Cavs. And like I want it, man. I want to see how our guards handle all their ball pressure. This is the best defense in the team in the league by a mile. You know, they don't turn the ball over at all. They turn people over like crazy. We don't turn the ball over at all. I want it. I want it, Justin. I feel like both those games got flexed to national TV, one on ESPN, one on TNT. I feel like they come out of that 2-0. Like that is the conversations about this team start changing like that.
Yeah. And you know, as an optimist and a self-aware one at that, I sometimes pull punches because I'm like, I'm just going to sound like too big of a homer. Like I'm going to be puffing my chest out a little bit too much. The thing I really felt watching that Denver game and watching how much fun the Cavs have and you know, just how good they've been this season. Teams that look like this and feel like this very often win a championship. Like, and you know, I'm not saying that they always do. I think back to, you know, 2009. That Cavs team, I still feel like if they would have played the Lakers, they would have won in that matchup. And you know, Orlando with Rashard Lewis stretching the floor and playing, you know, a style that would become more popular down the road, kind of caught them off guard. And anything can happen with shooting variants and whatnot. And Boston is, you know, the champions. And until they're dethroned, you're going to give them the credit. But I think that this team is legitimately good enough to win a championship. And I feel really good being in that spot. I
honestly think we'd be being wusses if we weren't there by now.
Yeah,
because like
honestly,
that's just self-preservation.
Gloves. Yeah, like the national folks are saying it now. Like, well, I don't know why I'm being a coward here.
Dude,
like,
I turned on the DNVR post-game show because I just wanted to hear what like Adam Maris and them had to say. And I forget who it was on their panel. They kind of have like a sponsored takeaway segment. And one of the panelists, his takeaway was like, that's the NBA champion right there. Like, like you're sending enough teams into these crises of confidence by beating the tar out of them so badly.
Did you hear Michael Malone post game?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I don't know, man. He likes
the roster construction a lot.
Yeah, I just think I think we're at the point now. Like I don't think either of us right this very second would pick the Cavs over Boston in a series, but like we would be cowards if we didn't think. You know, I think that would just be a hedge basically if we were to come on this podcast and say this team is not a title contender because they are.
Well, yeah, here's like this is the least sexy thing I could possibly say. Like, I think the Cavs are good enough to win a championship. And when it comes to a series against Boston, it's going to come down to who plays better 4 out of 7 times. Like, I think it really would come down to we have enough weapons, we have enough talent, and it's going to come down to execution. Maybe Boston's execution is going to be that much greater. Maybe the championship experience they have is what puts them over the edge. But I think the Cavs, as currently constructed, have enough talent to win. And you know, I'm not a big rankings person. I like to define things by tiers, but because so much of, you know, like basketball discourse historically is rankings orientated, that's usually how I describe it. I feel like the Cavs have 3 top 20 players. Like if you rank them all out, maybe there's like 27 players that are top 20 caliber in today's NBA. But when I think in my head what a top 20 player is, I think that they have 3 guys that are legitimately playing at that kind of a level.
Well, we think 3 guys should be all-stars on this team, and I don't think almost anyone would disagree with that. So yeah, right there, that's 3 out of 24.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I just feel like if they can continue building off of this success, if they can continue finding opportunities in the regular season to explore the space, to add to their games and building off this chemistry, they're going to give themselves a good shot. I think all this is going to come down to, when you look at the remaining 50 games of the season, is how much more prepared can they get for that series against Boston? Because I don't think that there's any scenario where you're going to feel like, all right, we're in a should-win series against Boston. But I think you can feel better and better about your chances to really challenge them, to really give them a good series. And I think you look at the Western Conference, and until Chet comes back and is looking like himself, there just isn't kind of that clear-cut top-level talent team that has separated themselves from the pack in the same way.
No, this team is so good, man. They're just so good. I don't know. I'm running out of superlatives, man. Like, the shooting hasn't gone down, and I actually did a little dig, Justin, because I was like, like they blew the doors off to start the year offensively. Everyone agreed this was unsustainable. Like, the shooting was not going to stay this good, and eventually, daddy variance was going to come for us all, and this team's offense was going to take a little dip. And they were so good that we were like, okay, that's fine. Like, because the defense will get better, and even if there's a dip, like, as long as they're if they're a top 10 offense at the end of the year, great. So they start out in their 15-0 start. They post a 122.1 offensive rating, and in the following 16 games, they're at 121.3. Like, it's barely gotten worse, and their net rating has only gotten down 0.2. Like, that, there has been no leveling off. And that's with 4 losses in there. Like, you could argue, I'll bet in their wins, they've actually outperformed their first 15,
Statistically, they would have had to. That's the only way that it works, right?
A great point. So, I don't know, man. Like, it's not slowing down, bro. It's not slowing down. It's so fun. And, until it does, until I see, either a real injury bug hit, knock, knock, knock on that wood, or, I see a legitimate drop-off in play, I'm going to assume 31 games into the year, almost halfway through the season, we're 10 games away from the halfway point. You can only assume what we're seeing is real at this point.
Yeah, and you get Dean Wade back for Denver. I thought he was fantastic as well. His impact on the boards was great, but he comes in, shoots 3 or 4 from 3. Since this recent stretch, since he's been on the podcast, that man's shooting well from 3 again, right? He's up to 36% already for the year. So as Ty Jerome's 3-point shooting comes back to earth a little bit, Dean Wade comes back and he's starting to shoot well,
how about
right?
Sammy Snipes?
Sam Merrill starts shooting better, right? Max Strus is back with the team and finding his rhythm. As much as Max having the time off where you play 2 games in 11 days or whatever the hell the Cavs did there, that was great for kind of bringing him back slowly and making sure there's no setbacks and actually getting some practice time. But for getting in actual game shape, that's not great. I would actually kind of like to see him. I don't know if Kenny's going to do this because they've just taken such a cautious approach. I'd kind of like to see him play both games of the back-to-back. You have 2 days off. He's still on that minutes restriction.
He did play 24 against Denver, which is a little bit more than he played in his last couple.
And if you look at the rotation for the year, that's just what, the
that might be what he plays.
That might be what he plays. But, he's getting back into game shape. And, I think he was.
Yeah, by the way, Karras averaging exactly 24 minutes a game this year.
All right, the proof is in the pudding there, but I thought, especially when you're not fully in game shape playing in Denver, it looked like he was sucking wind at times. But when we talk about guys, how most of their 3-point attempts are open, Max Strus does not fall into that category. That shot in the corner was absolutely absurd.
That's a man who was feeling the vibes.
Yeah, and we were talking in our game threads in Discord during the game where I forget who was saying, I think Max needs to kind of get his confidence back. I'm like, I think he needs to get his conditioning back. I have never seen that man lack confidence, and that was like shortly before he pulled that shot.
Yeah, and like he's still working on it, because you're right, the conditioning is not quite there yet. He's shorting a lot, getting his feet, right on some of these attempts. But it's gonna come, man. And when it happens, it's just gonna be just another thing that can go right for this team. And It's not fair.
Yeah. And Isaac's been playing really well, and he isn't with the team right now, right? Like it's
incorrect. He is with the team. He's just not playing.
You know what I mean. Was that necessary?
I thought it was fun.
I hate you. Good correction, Carter. Bravo. Pat yourself on the back.
I just am saying it's exciting, because if he wasn't, if he was in horrible shape, he wouldn't be with the team.
Yeah. You're right. But, I really do feel like the depth helps you weather the storm, right? It helps you weather those highs and lows. And when you have 4-star players that can contribute at this level, you can weather some of them having those cold stretches, right? So
that's what I keep going back to, Justin, is like their margin for error on a night-to-night basis is just so damn high. Like, yes, their starters are playing great, but on nights where their starters aren't playing great, their bench is typically playing great. If Darius and Evan have it going, and Donovan and Jarrett don't, oh well. You're still gonna put up like it's like if everything isn't quite right, they put up a 114 offensive rating. If everything's amazing, they put up a 125 or a 130. Like the floor is just so damn high that it just doesn't matter.
You're not wrong. If you could stall for just like another second here, I want to look losses. What is the Cavs' offensive rating in losses? It is, 114. They have the second highest offensive rating in losses this season.
Who has the highest, out of curiosity?
Your favorite, OKC.
Ugh. Yeah, that makes sense, though, because I feel like generally they are like, they have taken, there's a reason they've lost one more game than us and have a better net rating than us, is because their losses are always like 2 points, 6 points. Except the NBA Cup, which I'm furious doesn't count for the purposes of this.
The funny thing is, their offensive rating in wins is only 1 point better than it is in losses. They're just kind of flat. It's, for us, that's a big drop off from what we do in wins. For OKC, that's par for the course. So we will continue to talk smack about the West's offenses, unless they all hang like 130 points on us like Denver did. And then maybe we should talk about them a little differently. But I'm excited to see, these next couple games. Golden State just snapped a losing streak, winning against Phoenix, but they've lost 3 of their last 10, or they've won 3 of their last 10 games. Lakers, I'm a little interested with that one, especially after the trade, moving D'Angelo Russell for Dorian Finney-Smith.
One of the fastest reported to announce trades I've seen in a while.
Yeah, that moved really, really quick. And I think it's smart from their standpoint to kind of double down on size, moving your point guard for a 6'7" wing that kind of plays that 3-4. I think that offense is going to lack a little bit of juice, but leaving, putting all your stock on the defensive end when you have that kind of size, I think is important for them. So I'll be interested to see how Mobley and the Cavs do against that, because length has bothered them in the past. Maybe they'll kind of play it similar to that Brooklyn game where, instead of running kind of those side actions, they'll run more horns in the middle of the court, and rather so that they don't get trapped on the sidelines. I'll be interested to see how they approach that, but there's going to be interesting tests in these games.
Yeah, well, the other factor about these games that is like a little less like X's and O's is like they did embarrass both these teams early in the year.
It's a good point.
When you run a team off the floor, like immediately, like they did to the Lakers and Warriors, I do think there's a little bit of sharpness that they bring to you.
Especially when you're talking about LeBron James, Steph Curry, Draymond Green.
So, like, I would be surprised. This is not a hedge. This is not an emotional hedge. I would be surprised if they don't come out and give a good punch. Lakers, they should have DFS with them. I think, assuming it's already been announced, so all physicals have been cleared, and I got to imagine they got a flight today. I think both these teams are going to come out trying to show that they're not going to get sunned again.
I don't think it's an emotional hedge. I think we're rooting for this team to be tested. Like, I think the Cavs are rooting to be tested, right? Like, I think, having close games, getting experience executing in those situations, having star players like Steph Curry and LeBron James give you their best shot. I think that's exactly the type of environment that we want to see this team be in. Pass or fail. We want those kind of actionable data points, and I thought they got a very good punch from Jokic on Friday, and they were able to weather that storm. Let's see if Steph Curry and LeBron James can do the same. I'm
real quick before we because I know we're getting near wrap time. Thoughts on the DFS?
I had the rap cadence, baby.
You sure did, and I wanted to cut you off. Thoughts on the DFS trade? Because he's a name that has been linked to the Cavs in reports in the past. Obviously, he goes off the market. No firsts exchanged, even though there was some posturing that might be the price. What are your thoughts?
I thought it was interesting. The point about no first being exchanged, I think, is the most interesting part, because it does seem like there's a shift from when teams were really undervaluing first, or not undervaluing them, but they were very willing to give up first round picks. I think that is changing with the current CBA. I think teams recognize the ability to retain cheap talent and hope that they can hit and develop those types of players, like we're doing with Jalen Tyson. And I think it hurts Brooklyn's negotiating stance. Mark Stein talked about this, how they held pretty firm that, hey, we want a first round pick for Dennis Schroeder. We want a first round pick for Dorian Finney-Smith. And the fact that they didn't get one for either, that might have an impact on Cam Johnson trade conversations in the future, right? So within that Stein piece, he mentioned a lot of veterans that are apparently going to be available for second round picks. I think, the calculus has kind of changed, but the other impact of the CBA, and I think you see it when you look at guys like Dorian Finney-Smith, Jonas Valanciunas, Malcolm Brogdon, Bruce Brown. Those were all kind of thought to be, valuable contracts, easy to move. It's tough to kind of get to that matching salary now. Like, I think teams are a lot more leery, and you're giving up someone that's already part of your rotation and an important piece in a lot of these instances. So I just think it's made trades so much more difficult, and it's really kind of made the internal development and finding ways to bring guys along and make them better versions of themselves. I think that's really kind of become the most important thing in team building.
Good thing we're good at it.
Yes, good thing we're good at it. I think back to Dorian Finney-Smith is one of those guys that we've talked about for years, because he's been linked to the Cavs in trade rumors, and we kind of had those discussions of, all right, is he really bringing more than Dean Wade when Dean's healthy and playing well? Like, Dean is able to protect the rim. He's a better rebounder. The shooting was similar, even though DFS is having a very good shooting year. Wade was shooting better the last couple of years, right? Like,
one of these dudes can play spot minutes at the 5, and it is not Dorian Finney-Smith.
Right. So, I think that it just makes these kind of conversations more difficult. I think, it's one of those things where, the Cavs are fortunate. They don't have bad contracts on the books. Like, everyone is performing very well for how they are compensated. And it really does kind of make finding avenues to improve the team more difficult, although I would expect Kobe Altman is examining absolutely every single option when it comes to the upcoming trade
as
deadline.
They should.
Yeah. It's evaluating every option. Even if you decide not to, it's going to give you peace of mind that, hey, we thoroughly explored what avenues are available. So we'll see what comes of it. And I think a more difficult trade market might make for a more interesting buyout market. Because if teams can't find, the matching salaries to get second round picks, how far down kind of the negotiating with yourself kind of, hierarchy of decision making is, all right, we went from wanting a first round pick for this guy to, all right, maybe we want a second round pick or two. How much further down do you have to get to, all right, maybe we should just buy this guy out? We're like, are we really going to hang on to him, trying to get a 1 or 2 second round picks, or should we just kind of do right by this disgruntled veteran or some that we don't have in our future plans? It really could make for a more interesting buyout market, and I think that is something that would be very easy for the Cavs to get engaged in. Yep, it's gonna be interesting, and I'm excited to see what they do. I do think the smart thing to do is leave no stone unturned and really dig, but it's going to be a complicated bit of team building here. Luxury tax implications to be considered, how team chemistry to be considered, not wanting to mess up a good thing, but also wanting to get better whenever you get a chance to. I think it's going to be the hardest bit of GMing Kobe Altman and Mike Gansey have ever had to do. Yeah, everything gets more and more complicated, and the decisions become less and less clear the closer you get to a championship. And it's all I can really say is they're in a very good position from a negotiating standpoint. It's not like, oh God, we need to fill a need, we need to fix something that's wrong. With the way that the team is performing and with their guys all playing at kind of a maximum level, it's going to put them in a very good light as well. So. That can open up possibilities that you didn't think were there before. So it's a lot of fun. But while this team is healthy, as you said, knock on wood, while this team is playing well, I am going to enjoy the hell out of it in its current iteration and see how they play in these next couple games. So we will be going live either I think Wednesday or Thursday. I don't have the schedule up right now, but after the Warriors and Lakers games,
I want to say it's Thursday because you wouldn't make me do a hungover New Year's Day podcast, would you?
That's why I put Thursday. I was looking at the schedule. I was like, we don't play Wednesday. You're right. That's exactly what it is. You guys enjoy the holidays. Enjoy your New Year's. Hopefully the Cavs can kind of finish off the year with 2 more wins. That would be absolutely fantastic. We appreciate all the support you guys gave for us in 2024. If you're watching live on YouTube, make sure you guys like and subscribe. Click that notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of that view to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.